It was the 5th of July, 1919, in the county of Leicestershire, England. The evening was warm and unhurried, the kind of summer dusk that settles slowly over the English Midlands, holding the last of the light long past 7 o'clock. The hedgerows along the old Roman road, known as Gartree Road, stood 8 feet tall and thick, with high summer green, their roots drinking from the soil of a land that had been farmed and walked and known for 2,000 years. Swallows cut low across the meadows. The air carried the smell of cut grass and warm earth. In the village of Stoughton, 4 miles east of Leicester, a young woman named Annie Bella Wright rose from her sleep at 4 o'clock that afternoon. She had worked the night shift at the rubber factory, cycling 5 miles into the city in the small hours, and she had returned home at 8:30 in the morning to sleep. She was 21 years of age. Those who knew her described her as cheerful and well-regarded, a girl of good character and considerable beauty, the eldest of 7 children in a thatched cottage on the edge of the village. She washed, she dressed, she sat at the small table by the window and wrote a letter to the man she intended to marry, a Royal Navy stoker named Archie Ward, stationed in Portsmouth aboard the training vessel HMS Diadem. She folded the letter, walked her bicycle to the post office in Avington to send it, and then turned her wheels toward the village of Golby to call upon her uncle. The summer road was quiet. The hedges were green and high on either side. She would not return home alive. By 6:30 that evening, Bella Wright had left Stoughton and was cycling northeast along the lanes toward Golby, a journey of some 4 miles through the rolling arable country east of Leicester. She rode a plain working bicycle, as she always did. It was her freedom and her employment both. She had ridden this road, or roads very like it, all her life. She knew the fields on either side, the particular sound of wheels on chalk and flint, the way the light fell through gaps in the hedge at the end of a summer day. At approximately 6:45, somewhere on the road between Golby Lane and Houghton Lane, she found herself troubled by a loose freewheel on her bicycle and had dismounted to attend to it. A man on a green bicycle came upon her, where she stood at the roadside. He was of medium build, somewhere between 35 and 40 years of age, with a broad face and greying hair, and was dressed in a grey suit, grey cap, collar and tie, and black boots. His bicycle was a Birmingham Small Arms Company machine, a distinctive pea green in colour, fitted with an unusual coaster brake operated by pedalling in reverse. It was, as would later be established, a machine that had been purchased new in 1910 from Orton Brothers of Derby. It was not a bicycle one could easily mistake or forget. The man offered his assistance. He had no spanner to hand, but he did what he could with the mechanism. They spoke in the manner of strangers on a country road, briefly and without incident. He learned she was cycling to Golby. She learned nothing of him that was ever formally confirmed. They rode together toward the village. By 7:30, Bella had arrived at the cottage of her uncle, George Measures, on the lane through Golby. The man on the green bicycle did not enter. He remained outside in the lane while Bella went in to pay her visit, and Measures noted with a degree of unease the manner in which the stranger stood at the gate. He did not care for the look of the man. He said as much in quiet terms to his son-in-law, James Evans, who had come out to observe. Bella told her uncle she had only met the man that evening, that he was a perfect stranger who had ridden alongside her for some miles. She added, perhaps as reassurance, that he was not bothering her at all. Nothing more was thought of it, and the conversation moved on. The man outside waited in the lane. The evening settled. Time passed. Bella Wright remained inside her uncle's cottage for something close to an hour. Measures and Evans went outside at one point during the visit and observed the man on the green bicycle passing slowly along the lane, paying obvious attention to the house. Nothing was said. He circled, as it were, like a slow tide. When Bella at last came out and approached her bicycle, the man was still there at the gate, and those present heard him address her directly. He said, "Bella, you have been a long time. I thought you had gone the other way." He used her name. He had not been introduced. Neither Measures nor Evans remarked upon it openly, though Evans had spoken with the man briefly about his bicycle during the wait, and noted nothing alarming in the exchange. The three observed, and perhaps wondered, but Bella seemed untroubled. She spoke to her uncle once more before leaving, and said, with a kind of wry lightness, that she would try to give the man the slip. She was smiling as she said it. She and the man rode away together at approximately 20 minutes to 9. At 10 minutes past 9, a farmer named Joseph Cowell was driving cattle along Gartree Road in the evening dusk when he came upon something in the roadway ahead of him. His cattle slowed. He saw a bicycle lying across the lane, and beside it, a figure face down in the road. He brought his car to a stop. The figure was a young woman. Her face was turned toward the road surface and was covered in blood. Her feet lay partly on the grass verge, as though she had pitched forward and come to rest slantwise. Cowell lifted her and moved her carefully to the grass at the side of the road. She was still warm. He could hear no breath. More, he had not heard a gunshot. No one had. He drove his cart to the village of Great Glen to fetch Constable Alfred Hall. Hall telephoned Dr. Williams in Bilston, and the two men returned with Cowell to the spot on Gartree Road. The doctor examined the body by the poor light of a lamp, agreed with Cowell's initial assessment that she had likely been struck by a passing vehicle and had fallen from her bicycle, and gave instructions for the body to be moved on Cowell's strap to a vacant cottage nearby. The bicycle was noted. The lane was quiet. The high hedges stood dark on either side. It was said to be an unfortunate accident. Nothing more was thought of it. Constable Hall was not satisfied. He had stood on that road in the lamplight and looked at the blood on the young woman's face, and something in the scene did not accord with what he understood a bicycle accident to resemble. He returned to Gartree Road alone at 6 o'clock the following morning in the clean early light of the 6th of July. He found the large blood stain still darkening the flint and chalk of the road where the body had lain. He found the front wheel of the girl's bicycle still pointing in the direction of Stoughton. She had been riding home. He found, on the white-painted top rail of a field gate, some distance from the bloodstain, smears of blood that no bicycle fall could explain. Beyond the gate, in the meadow, a large carrion crow lay dead in the grass. A trail of claw marks in the blood marked 6 separate passages between the gate and the place where the body had fallen. Then, 17 feet from the bloodstain, partially embedded in the imprint of a horse's hoof in the surface of the road, he found a bullet. Hall proceeded at once to the cottage where the body had been taken, and there, with careful hands, he cleaned the dried and clotted blood from the face of Annie Bella Wright. Beneath the left eye, small and round and unmistakable, he found the entry wound of a gunshot. The exit wound was discovered at the rear of the skull. She had been shot once, from a distance of 6 to 7 feet, as she cycled homeward along Gartree Road. She had been killed in all probability before she struck the ground. Dr. Williams was summoned again and attended with a colleague to conduct a full post-mortem examination. The body was formally identified by relatives as Annie Bella Wright of Stoughton. The bullet recovered from the road was of .455 caliber. The inquest, convened within days, returned a verdict of willful murder by person or persons unknown. The Chief Constable of Leicestershire immediately issued appeals to both the local and national press, calling upon the man seen riding the green bicycle to come forward and assist the inquiry. A description was circulated. A man of medium height, 35 to 40 years of age, broad-faced, grey-haired, dressed in a grey suit and grey cap, riding a pea-green BSA bicycle with a coaster brake. The appeal went unanswered. The weeks passed. No one came forward. The post-mortem examination conducted by Dr. Williams and his colleague in the days following Bella Wright's death established with clarity what the constable had already suspected. Beth, the deceased, had been struck by a single projectile entering beneath the left eye at a distance of between 6 and 7 feet from the weapon. The bullet had passed through the skull, exiting from the right posterior region. Death would have been immediate. There were no marks on the body consistent with a struggle, no signs of assault beyond the wound itself, and the face powder on her cheeks was said to be undisturbed, a detail noted and later much discussed. She had not fallen in a fight. She had been struck, perhaps while in motion, or perhaps while paused upon the road. The .455 caliber bullet recovered by Constable Hall from the road surface was submitted for examination. The Leicester gunsmith, Henry Clark, retained as expert witness, would subsequently note that the bullet showed damage consistent with a possible ricochet, and that it might have been fired from either a service revolver or a rifle at some distance. This detail, modest in appearance, would later carry considerable weight. For 7 months, the investigation stalled. The green bicycle could not be traced. The man could not be found. The appeals in the press produced nothing of substance. On the 10th of July, a cycle repairman named Harry Cox informed the constabulary that he had repaired a bicycle matching that description on the very day of the murder, and that the owner had mentioned an intention to ride into the country. Cox was unable at that time to identify the man further. Then, on the 23rd of February 1920, a horse-drawn coal barge, piloted along the River Soar by a man named Enoch Whitehouse, snagged its tow rope on an obstruction beneath the surface of the water. When the line was hauled up, the corroded frame of a pea-green bicycle broke the surface of the canal. The river was dredged. Further pieces were recovered over subsequent hours. The serial number had been filed from the frame and from the seat lug. The BSA brand name had been removed from the fork, but on the inside face of the front fork, faint and only partially effaced, a number remained. Inquiries at bicycle dealers traced the machine to a purchase made in 1910 from Orton Brothers of Derby. The purchaser's name was recorded in the ledger. His name was Ronald Vivian Light. Ronald Light was arrested on the 4th of March 1920 at Dean Close School in Cheltenham, where he had obtained employment as a teacher of mathematics some 2 months previously. He was conveyed to Leicestershire and charged with the willful murder of Annabella Wright. He was 34 years of age. He denied, initially, everything. He had not been in Galby on the 5th of July. He had never owned a green bicycle. He had never met Bella Wright. When the serial number and the purchase records were laid before him, he stated that he had sold the bicycle some years previously to an officer whose name he could no longer recall. When the witnesses placed him at the scene, he revised his account again. He was identified from a police identity parade by George Measures, by James Evans, and by the cycle repairman, Harry Cox. His mother's maid, Mary Elizabeth Webb, Tom confirmed was that on the evening of the 5th of July, he had not returned home until approximately 10 o'clock, claiming his bicycle had broken down and he had been obliged to push it. On the 19th of March, additional objects were recovered from the canal. An army pistol holster, conclusively identified as having been issued to Ronald Light during his military service, and 12 live .455 caliber cartridges precisely matching the spent bullet recovered from Gartree Road. The trial of Ronald Light opened at Leicester Castle on the 8th of June 1920 before Mr. Justice Horridge. The prosecution was led by Sir Gordon Hewitt, the Attorney General of England and Wales. The defence was conducted by Sir Edward Marshall Hall, King's Counsel, whose reputation in the courts of England was by that time formidable. Light testified in his own defence. He admitted calmly and without visible distress that he had been with Bella Wright that evening. He admitted that the bicycle, the holster, and the cartridges were his. He stated He had disposed of them in a panic, having read the press accounts and feared, as a man with a checkered history, that he would be falsely accused. He said that they had parted amicably near King's Norton, that she had ridden south and he had returned to Leicester, and that he had no knowledge of how she had died. Marshal Hall emphasized to the jury the absence of a demonstrated motive. He raised the matter of the ballistics evidence, that the bullet's damage was consistent with a ricochet, that a rifle shot from a distance could not be excluded. After 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty. The courtroom was reported to have cheered. Annie Bella Wright was buried on the 11th of July 1919 in the churchyard of St. Mary and All Saints in Stoughton in the county of Leicestershire. Several hundred mourners attended. The vicar, the Reverend W. N. Westmore, asked those assembled to pause and reflect upon this poor girl, taken so suddenly from among them. Wreaths were laid by family, neighbours, colleagues from the factory in the city. The polished elm coffin was carried from her family's cottage to the small graveyard not far away. No headstone was erected. Her family could not afford one, and the name of her killer was not known, and perhaps it seemed, in that grief, that the ground itself must be sufficient record. For several decades, the green BSA bicycle hung from a hook on the wall of a cycle shop in Evington, a curiosity and a memento, until it passed from that place and its whereabouts became unknown. Ronald Light returned to his mother's house in Leicester following his acquittal and adopted, for a time, the name Leonard Estelle. He was fined in December of 1920 for having registered at a hotel under this false name while staying with a woman. By 1928, he was living on the Isle of Sheppey in Kent. In 1934, he married a widow named Lillian Lester. He taught, he lived quietly, he moved through the years. He died on the 15th of May, 1975, at the age of 89. He was cremated at Charing Crematorium near Ashford, and his ashes were scattered in the Garden of Remembrance. He left no children. His stepdaughter did not learn of his trial and acquittal until after his death. 3 days after his acquittal, the superintendent of Leicestershire Police, Levi Bowley, typed a statement. It recorded that Light, while held on remand awaiting trial, had spoken with him in a spirit of apparent confidence. The statement claims that Light had said he had shot Bella Wright, that it had been entirely accidental, that the revolver had discharged as she had reached out her hand to examine it at his invitation, that he had not known it was loaded. He told the superintendent, so the note claims, that he would deny the statement in its entirety if it were ever made public. The note was filed among the administrative records of the case. It was found again, much later, by historians. Its authenticity has never been confirmed. It has never been refuted. In 1980-something, a local historian named Mackintosh wrote a pamphlet about the case with the purpose of raising enough money to purchase a headstone for Bella's unmarked grave. The money was raised, the stone was set. The churchyard at Stoughton is quiet. The lanes around Little Stretton are much as they were. In summer, the hedgerows stand very tall, and the light comes slowly down. The old Roman road still runs straight and certain through the Leicestershire plain as it has run for 2,000 years, indifferent to what has passed upon it. The file remains. The question remains. The lane remains. Only Bella Wright is gone.